Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage SAP's Global Vice President, Intelligent Enterprise Solutions, Matt Jennings.
Well, thank you. It's great to have the opportunity to be here with Geotab at this event. We first started talking to Geotab probably about 9 to 10 months ago, and really on the idea of the synergies that exist between our organizations. If you look at Geotab and the data that's generated on a regular basis, and you look at SAP with the applications that we have and the need to consume data, you can start to understand the synergies that exist. As we sat down with the leadership team and started understanding the overlap of customers and the requests we were getting from customers regarding telematics data into back-end systems, things started to make sense about how do we evolve this discussion. So we've been having a lot of go-to-market discussions, a lot of architecture-type discussions to figure out the technology. So I want to give you some perspective for SAP and how we see the market and why we see the market the way we do. One of the things that we understand is the market is changing. SAP has over 400,000 customers globally. 77% of the world's finance transactions or revenue transactions touch an SAP system. And that spans over 25 different industry segments that we actually focus on. So it gives us a real perspective to understand what's happening in the market. And in the context of this, those organizations that have fleets, how are they looking at things? So we start to see some common elements across organizations and across industries. And so if you look at the common goals, digital disruption, the idea to take data into the enterprise, how do they process that data? How do you drive that towards a business outcome? How do you drive for quality products? How do you maintain your spend under control on innovation as you're running your business? But also, how do you invest in those areas where we can take data into the enterprise and consume it in a way that meets particular challenges? The other thing that we're hearing from customers in various industries is that the lines of industries are blurring a little bit. For example, no longer is an automotive manufacturer just producing and manufacturing vehicles. They're starting to look at transportation as a whole. And so they need to rely on ecosystems. They need additional data to run their business from a services perspective. And so now we recognize that as these organizations are seeing these common threads and the industries are starting to change, how do we react differently to this? And part of that is we need to collect data that is insightful to the business in all areas of the business. So whether it be the experience of your customers, experience of your employees, experience of your assets, your vehicles, all of those things, and bringing that data into the organization. Once you have it, there's a lot of discussion on machine learning, AI, analytics. How do you process that data in a way that's meaningful for the organization to consume? And then lastly, how do you take those insights and create intelligence so that you can streamline business operations, you can enhance business processes, you can interact with your customers in a more positive way that causes stickiness in the organization. So we recognize the opportunity here with Geotab is to really, from a strategic standpoint, partner, leveraging the data that comes from the vehicle or from an IoT perspective with other operational data that exists in or around an enterprise, and be able to bring that data, analyze it, and impact various business outcomes. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is and the 3 pillars that are required to actually make this successful. The first is how we as SAP look at the intelligent enterprise, which is a utilization of enabling technologies to enhance a business process end to end. How do you make that more efficient, extract costs, add stakeholder value for whoever manages that business process? And so as we look at these enabling technologies like IoT, connectivity, machine learning, AI, analytics, cloud, there's been an evolution of that. From what used to be programmable logic controllers in a factory to then client-server technology in the 90s, which allowed for business process re-engineering. And now we've reached a point where we need smart, intelligent technologies to help process the data that's coming into the organization. These technologies, as we know, have become more and more feasible. They become more available. They're viable to our businesses. You know, if you look at just the cost changes in the economic models of connecting an asset from 15 years ago to today, you can almost connect just about everything in a more economical way. So that is the opportunity to bring a lot of data into an organization. The reason you bring that data in, obviously, is you want to promote automation. So as you look at over time, there's more and more automation that's happening in an enterprise environment. The repetitive tasks through things like robotic process automation, AI, machine learning are becoming minimized, and there's less and less of those tasks. The idea is to focus our most important asset, our human capital, on those tasks that are high value to the organization, and that could be customer service, that could be development of quality products. You know, how do you engage the organization leveraging that data to focus on the high value tasks? A large, big differentiator. This all requires data. A couple of things, if you listen to what analysts say and what IBM says, 90% of the world's data has been generated in the last 24 months. And that's interesting to think about. What will the next 2 years look like, and how much more data will we generate in that time? The Economist, I think, coined the phrase that data is the new oil. And I tend to agree with that, with one caveat, which is oil is extracted and refined for one use. Data is extracted and refined multiple times and leveraged in multiple ways to add different value to the enterprise. So I want to give an example of that. As every data starts to think about a data company, and I put this together with some general information about how data is used and why it's critical to the enterprise. If you think about a connected vehicle and automotive manufacturers, the data that I could find for total cars produced in 2018 was about 70 million cars globally. Now, if you look at the market cap for the top 5 companies over the last 10 years, that market cap has decreased by about $5 billion. Tesla, 2018, manufactured 360,000 cars, and they have a market cap of $75 billion. Now, there's a lot of discussion to be made that they're focused on autonomy and things like that, but I think what's more important is the amount of data that they collect. It allows them to look at new business models for how they're approaching the market. One analyst predicted that they have 1.8 billion miles of driving data available to them. So think about that. Not only do they capture the experience of the car, of the driver, what that driver is actually doing inside the vehicle, how the vendor components are being utilized and maintained and supported inside of the vehicle, it changes fundamentally their entire business. Yes, they can then go and have different vendor conversations when they're going to negotiate the contracts for better quality products, but they can then drive that discussion inside of their business across marketing to segment their customer base, across quality, engineering, manufacturing. They have more data than they probably know what to do with at this point, but they own the experience of their vehicle. So we often say you need to liberate that data across the organization, and I like to give this as an example. You know, I often hear when we're at these events and people say, well, my customer has SAP. I'm like, well, what does that mean? And they just say, well, it's SAP. Well, we have a number of applications inside of an organization. So if you were to go wall to wall with SAP, we say you have to liberate data across the organization for the various stakeholders. And what that means is to go to each one of these stakeholders, finance, accounting, HR, procurement, manufacturing, quality, engineering, and start to discuss if the data, for example, from a vehicle, telematics data is available, and at no cost, how would you use it? And then that's back into the economics to see what works. So you really need to liberate the data across the organization and focus on the business outcomes that you're trying to achieve. The last pillar that we'll talk about is experience. And those of you who know SAP and have followed SAP, we've made some investments around the experience. And as the CEO of Microsoft will say, experience is multi-channel. It's devices, it's your brand, it's people, it's your customers, it's your employees, it's across the board. I like to give this as a reference to how data is being generated in the experience of people. This picture is taken from the same location at the Vatican with the Pope giving a discussion, and it's 13 years different. And look at the amount of data that's being generated, the customer sentiment that's being generated. Everybody is probably capturing that, they're probably posting it. sharing that data across the board, structured, unstructured data, semi-structured data. And so it's really changing how products are perceived in the world. So if they're doing this, in this environment, they're definitely doing it with vehicles, they're doing it with a business process to support a vehicle, et cetera. So that leads us into a discussion on what does the future look like? How complex are we making this with not only is it data from a vehicle, but it's data from our enterprise, from our stakeholders, our employees, our brand, our assets. We have a tremendous amount of data. Neil referred to it earlier. We have this big data challenge, and how do we manage that? And the future is we have an expectation of our customers that they place an order with us, they pay, we track, we have to support that. And then inside of our organization, we have all these different processes that happen. Logistics, fulfillment, manufacturing, marketing, procurement, service, HR. We have outside contractors and other service priorities that come to us. And when our customer interacts with us, we take them through a process, and their experience happens, and they realize how they interact with us. Not only that, but we have our own experiences of interacting with that customer. Now, in order to procure this and make sure we put this deal together and for the customer, we have to do a lot of reconciliation internally. And this is typically what it looks like inside of an organization and the experience you have as an organization to process that. And we create operational data that then becomes the intelligent enterprise. And what we say and what we believe is you have to have the ability to capture the experience of your brand, your assets, your people, your employees, your vehicles, and you also have to capture your operational data and bring that together with enabling technologies and promote that towards business outcomes. Let me finish with a couple of comments on some things that we're hearing from customers that are approaching us related to vehicle. We talk about nuts and pork. It's really an ag discussion, but it's about the production that happens from a harvest, for example, and what data you can capture from operations of a harvest to the vehicle data. And little did we know, for example, commodities traders in New York City want that data. When is the harvest happening? How quickly did it happen? When will it be on the truck? When will it be at the dock? I can get 3 days ahead if I have that information. Similar things with, we've been asked to do inspection reports. Can we automate that? Can we then automate that and find errors within the vehicle, tie that to procurement, automatically schedule service, automatically invoice? Augmented reality. Can you look through a tablet, as an example, and see the operating conditions of a vehicle as you're going to service that? So you don't have to necessarily go pull the data. You can just see the data as it's operating. It'll make recommendations as to what needs to be done. And fraud and compliance. This is understood, but it's relatively simple. But if you have a corporate fuel card and you utilize it at a filling station, is it used at where the vehicle was? And some of those simple things that our customers are asking us for. Similar to on compliance. Can we take data about driver behavior and bring that into an HR system so we can goal drivers and reward them based on, an objective measurement? So those are some of the things that we're doing and some of the things that we're seeing and hearing from our customers. I'll end with that to say we really see the opportunity strategically between the two organizations. We have a team here from SAP that's happy to work with anybody who has customers or yourself are customers of SAP and work on how do we leverage data within the enterprise, outside of the enterprise, or from the vehicle to focus on business outcomes. So with that, any questions? Thank you.